Hello, it's been a long while since I've done a reading update. In August, I was traveling and also had visitors, and also was just in a mega slump. I think that is just the way it tends to go with me at the end of my last video, which would have been end of July. I think I was like, wow, I've never read so many books before, and I just want to read constantly. And then right after that, I fell into a severe, almost 2 month long book rut. And I wish I had, you know, more control over that and I could even it out a little bit, but I don't think that I have any control over that. But now I am reading a ton again. I've read several books in the last week. But before that, before my rut, I did finish after Beach Read, which I think was the last book. In my last video, I went on to read Book Lovers, which I loved so much more than Beach Read. I think I just didn't really care about January, really either of our protagonists or their love story in Beach Read. I just didn't totally believe it. I liked the plot surrounding her dad and the house in the small town a lot more than I liked their love story. And in Book Lovers, I really loved everything. I really loved Nora. I myself am an older sister, and so the themes of being an older sister in this book were especially cute and personal to me. I gave this one a 3.75, which I have never seen anyone say that they preferred Book Lovers over Beach Read. I think Beach Read tends to be a lot of people's favorites of Emily Henry's books, or at least before Funny Story. So I found it intriguing that that's the one that I've liked the least so far, I think. But yes, I have, what do I have left? I have People We Meet on Vacation left. And then I continued on Ashley Poston and I read The 7-Year Slip. I gave this one a 3.5, I think mostly because I did not like Clementine, our main protagonist. I really liked the love interest, whose name was Ewan. I thought that he was really cute and charming, and I really liked that he's a chef. You know, I felt like that's very in keeping with the bear and everything else that's popular right now because of that. But I was not a fan of Clementine. However, while it's not easy to read, I still continue to like Ashley Poston's writing, and especially her, like, the way that she writes magical realism, which I have figured out that I really like. I was never a fantasy person growing up, and I still don't really like too many things that delve too far into like magic systems and everything, and I love that hers are just like, this is what's happening, this apartment travels through time, etc. And so I already have her next book, a novel love story, and I will read that here before too long. But yeah, so I gave that one a 3.5. So right after that, I was traveling to... No, my chair went down. Right after that, I was traveling to Savannah to see Sam, and I finally read The Ministry of Time on my Kindle. I got it in as a rental from the library, and that was my traveling buddy while I was in Savannah. I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads. I think it's probably like a 4.75, but I rounded it up just because I think that the book and this author, I would love to support what she continues to write. I'm so interested to see what she does next. I love this book. This is not something that was overhyped. I was very nervous about that because I've spent the last year in person and in my videos talking about how excited I was to read it. But yeah, the hype was not misplaced at all. Sometimes it was hard to read. I felt like my like reading style didn't totally match with her writing style, but the idea of it was so intriguing. And this, again, like, it starts to delve a little bit more into sci-fi towards the end of the book, but for most of the book it's magical realism. It's, you know, we created time travel, but there's not a lot of science behind it. It's more like we're dealing with it from a human perspective. And I loved that. Everything that Graham, our time traveler, says about society in the 21st century was so interesting. It is one of those that I read it and I was like, how did she come up with these ideas? How does she like separate herself from her life, see it from like a higher viewpoint, and come up with these things that this time traveler would say about her modern lifestyle? Like, I don't know how to explain it. I just thought that it was so intriguing and so impressive that she was able to discuss and come up with these concepts. I thought our main character wasn't my favorite, mostly because I feel like it was almost too confusing at times being in her head. It felt very realistic that you're constantly jumping back and forth between all these different things that she's thinking. But sometimes it made it confusing to read. Graham, however, is 100% like my book crush for the year. I thought he was so interesting. And again, I just loved all of his observations about modern lifestyles. And I felt like it lost its way a little bit towards the end, which is why I docked it that like 0.25 on my rating. But overall, it was still just so smart and so intriguing that it felt wrong giving it anything less than like a 4 or 5. After the Ministry of Time, however, was when my book rut started. So I didn't read anything from August 8th until September 3rd. So I guess it was closer to a month than to 2 months like I thought it was. But yeah, I just couldn't pick anything up. I spent a lot of time watching a ton of movies. Again, my mom came to visit for my birthday, and there were just a couple other things going on. I got a new camera, which honestly I hate, and I'm still trying to figure out how best to use it. And I miss my old camera, which I turned in to get this one. And so a part of it honestly was also that I was really struggling to want to make any videos, and that kind of like has helped propel me to like keep reading this year. So I had like a month where I didn't read anything, and then I finally was like, this is ridiculous. I'm at least gonna like try to listen to an audiobook to get me started. And so what I thought would be a smart choice to get me back into it was Normal Women. I absolutely loved Hogarth's last book, which was her debut novel, Mother Thing. That was one of my absolute favorite books that I read 2 years ago. So I was so excited to get into another one of her books that also has a great cover. But it sat on my shelf for a long time because I was hyping it up in my head and I was nervous about it. And I was right to be nervous about it because I gave this 2 stars. And I don't even know that it's deserving of 2 stars, which I found so disappointing.
Be nice. I'm finding it.
This fits into, again, the like Hot Mess Express table at Barnes & Noble vibe. And I am definitely growing very tired of that narration style. It's so popular, so I feel like I'm just like so oversaturated with it. And this is particularly like that style in regards to being a new mother and how your life is changing when now you're just known as a wife and a mother instead of like having full autonomy of who you are and what you want to do and et cetera, et cetera. And I, in theory, like all those ideas, and I like how some of the observations that she made about those things. But overall, the actual plot that came along with this book did not make any sense. So much so that I like felt like I had missed something because the ending felt so rushed, and truly not just that like I didn't like the ending, like I truly don't think that it made any sense. So this was a very confusing read for me. I partially listened to it on audiobook and partially read it, and I'm gonna DNF it. I'm not even gonna keep it. I'm very interested to reread Mother Thing after I read this. Maybe I was just like in a particular headspace when I read Mother Thing, but I really thought I loved it so much. But this was honestly so bad that it's making me question how good Mother Thing was. So while this was not a good read, it did get me started on reading again. I think because I needed like a palate cleanser, I needed to read something good after I read this. So next, I did something fun for my dad for his upcoming birthday. So if he's watching this, I'm sorry it's getting ruined. You can either pretend like you don't know, or you can skip forward a couple minutes. But I got the hardback, Welcome to the OC, the oral history. My dad watched the show when I was growing up. I would have been, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years old when this show was on. And I vividly remember watching parts of the show with him. I remember going out to my room and getting out a little pad of paper and drawing a little web with all of the characters and all of the romance plots and connecting like who was related to who because of this and that. And this is truly like, I give this credit as producing the 2 male characters that have continued to influence my romantic interests for the rest of my life. Ryan Atwood, played by Ben McKenzie in the OC, is everything I have ever wanted and everything I have ever been interested in. If you haven't seen the show, he's very, very similar to like Conrad from The Summer I Turned Pretty, I would say is a very similar type. But it's what got me started on this like bad boy with a heart of gold, he's just going through a lot like thing. And Seth Cohen is the other character in the show, played by Adam Brody, and he's like the geeky, sarcastic, loves punk music, like funny sidekick character, but he's played by Adam Brody, so he's also extremely charming and charismatic. And you just love both of them so much. And I feel like every single person I have ever been like romantically interested in, you can draw to one of those 2 characters. So I fully blame the OC for these things. Anyway, my dad and I rewatched it during the pandemic together and actually finished it when I moved to Los Angeles. So it's like a very fun thing for us to connect over, and he loves books like this, like nonfiction, oral history things. So I've been planning to get it for him for a while. So I figured while I have it, I might as well read it before I give it to him. I don't know how to rate this book is the problem. It's like the whole thing is an interview style, like the whole thing. So you do get a lot of interesting backstory on like what was going on with the studios and scheduling and different things like that behind the scenes. But I think a lot of people were disappointed because you don't get as much like dirt on the relationships and whatnot as much as people expected to. I didn't really need that. I think that the filmmaking side of it is super interesting, the scheduling and the studios and stuff. But I was kind of sad because after the first season, it just sounds like they were all completely miserable making it, which is just sad to read about one of your favorite shows. But yeah, I have no idea how to rate this. I have no clue, but I read this next. The same day that I finished Welcome to the OC, I started Acts of Desperation by Megan Nolan. I have picked this up so many times and been like, okay, this is going to be the next book that I read, and I've never actually done it. I finally did it, and I don't know if you can tell. Oh, I don't even know. It might be too bright. I don't know if you can see. So many tabs. I really loved it. I gave it 4 stars. 4.25. Acts of Desperation is really just like following the inner monologue of a young woman while she's in a tumultuous relationship with an older man. This did have some hints of the Hot Mess Express narration, which honestly is the reason that it got docked rating-wise. But I mostly loved Acts of Desperation because it is so quotable. It's so quotable. Megan Nolan had so many, again, just like great observations about life and what it is to be a young woman trying to grow up and pave your way and have these romantic relationships, etc., etc. And for that reason, and also the fact that these are the shortest chapters I have ever read in my life, I loved it. When I say short chapters, I mean some of them are like this much of a page. And if you have short chapters in your book, I guarantee you that I will like it even more than I already would have. This is a chapter. So to any burgeoning authors out there, short chapters, please, I'm begging you. I'm begging. Let's find a good quote though. Oh, where was that one page that really knocked me on my ass? My understanding was that every action would lead me to where I ought to be ultimately, and where I ought to be was in love. Love was the great consolation. It would set ablaze the fields of my life in one go, leaving nothing behind. I thought of it as the great leveler, as a force which would clean me and by its presence make me worthy of it. There was no religion in my life after early childhood, and a great faith and love was what I had cultivated instead. Oh, don't laugh at me for this, for being a woman who says this to you. I hear myself speak. Love. Outside of the personal reasons that I love that quote, I also think it's a great example to show that she speaks to the reader, and when this is done well, I absolutely love it. So, Megan Nolan, I'm looking forward to reading her next book, which came out, I think, in the last year as well. Then, also off of my physical TBR, I read Girls by Emma Cline. This was okay. I gave it 3 stars. I've never been particularly interested in, cults, whether that be fiction or nonfiction, but I wasn't against it. I thought that it was interesting. I just didn't think there was anything necessarily, super special about the way that it was written. And as you know, being quotable and making these great observations is a huge part of the books that I love and the authors that I love to read. And so it was just okay. I don't have the physical copy with me because I gave it away at Silent Book Club, which I'm very proud of myself for going to. There are silent book clubs all over the US, so I highly recommend if you live in a major city, looking one up. But it was a really cool event where I just showed up to a park and read with a bunch of strangers, by yourself. You can put your headphones in, you don't have to talk to each other, but it's a cool opportunity to meet new friends. You can bring books that you want to get rid of and trade, and you get bookmarks, and it was just a fun little experience. And hopefully now that I have finally gone, I will continue to go and not be so anxious about kind of a social experiment like that. But anyways, so I gave up my copy there and wasn't planning to keep it. So it was okay, but I got it off of my TBR, and that is getting me on a good streak of continuing to get my physical TBR down. So then at Silent Book Club, I started Bluebeard's Castle by Anna Billard. This was so much fun. Sam texted me after I logged it on Goodreads the first time and was like, I read the synopsis, and the synopsis makes sense for why you're reading it, but I'm very confused by the cover of this book that you're reading. And it's true. I've never been a dark romance person, but it is so excellently printed, okay? Cover, okay, but then the insert, it's a whole, they clearly did a shoot for the inside of this print. This is nuts. It is so cool. Anna Billard, which I later learned is a writer and a director, and she does a lot of her own costume design and production design for these indie films that she makes, and I'm very much looking forward to going and watching some of them now, which made those shoots make a lot more sense. But I saw this on the new horror book table, at Barnes & Noble at the very beginning of the year, right before I started my book buying ban. And I was just so drawn towards it. Turns out it's like a campy, spoofy, dark romance, gothic, horror thriller. It's got a haunted house in it, which is my absolute favorite. And it was so self-aware, not only of what it was trying to be, but also of the books that have influenced it. She talks a lot about Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, Jane Eyre, what were the other ones she talked? Obviously Bluebeard. But yeah, it was just such a great little, I don't want to call it a parody because it's not a parody, but it was just heavily inspired by these lovely classics. And there's a lot of spice in it, so it made it more modern. And I don't know, I had a really fun time. I think I gave it a 3.75, and it will be pretty high up, I think, in my ratings for the year. But that was just a fun one. And then just yesterday, off of my physical TBR, I read The Latinist by Mark Prins. This is a modern retelling of Apollo and Daphne, and it's set in the academic world. This is definitely a dark academia book that you probably haven't heard of before. I just picked it up randomly at a bookstore, didn't know anything about it. Haven't seen it on Book Talk or BookTube or anything, so I highly recommend giving it a try if you're into mythology and dark academia. It also handles the subject of a professor and his student, or like mentee, which is also something that I've talked about that I'm very interested in literature and art. And this was pretty good. I also give this a 3.75, which it was the end of it that made me confused on what I wanted to rate it. I'm still trying to figure out exactly how I feel about the end of it. But overall, I think the idea of it was really great. I think that the writing was beautiful and very quotable again. And I look forward to reading anything else by Mark Prines. This was his debut novel. Yeah, so with those, I'm at 36 books read for the year. I only have 34 books left on my physical TBR, which has been so rewarding to see my bookshelf dwindle. I obviously have DNF'd a lot of books, which has taken a hit to, I think, how many books I would have read for the year otherwise, but it feels so nice to not have as many books to read on my TBR. I love the idea so much of like not having any modern lit fic at home and having to go to the library or get on Libby to rent the books to, see if I like them or not, and if I want a physical copy, and then hopefully also getting to work on more classics and nonfiction as well. So I'm doing pretty well. Hopefully this nice streak of the last, week or so that I've read multiple books will keep going. I structured that sentence weird, but hopefully the momentum continues. And yeah, what am I reading now? I have the audiobook for Hamnet just came in, so I'm gonna listen to that. I know that people love Hamnet. Sam loves Hamnet. I'm very excited about the word that we've gotten on the film adaptation. I love Shakespeare. I love Hamlet. I'm so excited to get into the story. I have started it 3 or 4 times at this point, and I cannot get into the book at all. So I've gotten the audiobook in hopes of that helping. I will for sure read it one way or the other. I'm not gonna DNF it, but I'm working on that. And yeah, I'll pick something else from my physical TBR after that to finish. So